start, inshallah, our forum today.
Inshallah.
Yang selalu cerita pasal negara bangsa. Banyak lagi di kedai. Ya, I want to dia sejarah dan yang dekat kemudian memang India nanti dia nanti polisi So what is the
Okay, we will give 25 minutes to each. Too long. Okay, maybe 20. Okay, no problem. We can have, let's say, 20 minutes, and then we do, inshallah. No problem. No. Okay. Okay, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. Dear professors, doctors, student, postgraduate student, lecturers, our viewers in the Zoom and in the YouTube and here in Ibn Khaldun, welcome to our first ISTAC forum on the Madani framework for civilizational development, wisdom, innovation, and compassion. Alhamdulillah, the International Institute of Islamic Thought and Civilization has been active in promoting Islamic thought and civilization in many forms and in many ways, starting from the ISTAC World Professorial Lecture to the Tana Air Malay World Maritime Civilization series, to Integration of Knowledge and Civilizational Development series, to Malay Manuscripts series, to many other events, activities organized by the Institute and also by Al-Ghazali Chair. Brothers and sisters, as you noted and you see the new developments in Malaysia, once the new Prime Minister, the 10th Prime Minister of Malaysia has been announced as the PM, one of the important things that happening in Malaysia here is his approach, which we call the Madani approach or the civil society approach, which is like in English they call it script, and Madani or civil society is like a framework for policy making and for the development of Malaysia, which brought a lot of things inside the document, combining many important principles of governance, of management, of sustainable development, of developing a multi-racial and multi-religious society like Malaysia. The document is providing a kind of an approach and a framework on the present and future development of Malaysia. So in ISTAC, as you are all aware, our main business is Islamic thought and civilization, means our business is Tamaddun. We work on the framework of civilizational studies, civil society, building civilization, and also these concepts of civil society and city and community and values are part and parcel of what we do. Alhamdulillah, for us to enrich the discourse and debates about the Madani framework, the Madani approach, we have today, alhamdulillah, invited some of our great scholars. And I'm very grateful that all the three scholars agreed and found time to join us here in this first ISTAC series. And for your information, this will not be the first and the last, but there will be series. And this first ISTAC forum is meant to look at Madani framework or approach in general terms, looking at its composition, its ideas, the main directions, and the aspects. Later on, inshallah, ISTAC will be working on talking about Madani framework in higher education, Madani framework in sustainable development, and in other areas, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah, today we have with us here Professor Dr. Osman Bakar, the holder of Al-Ghazali Chair, ISTAC IUM. We have also Dr. Sri Dr. Mujahid Yusuf Rawa, former minister in the Prime Minister's Department, Malaysia. And we have also our beloved Professor Dr. Azizan Baharuddin, the director of the Center for Civilizational Dialogue, and also UKM. She is the holder of a chair on sustainable development. Once again, after this introduction, I welcome all our participants who are with us here and also in the Zoom and YouTube, and we will have our forum. I'm going to give we will give 15 to 20 minutes to our professors and scholars to say their views and ideas on whatever aspect of Madani framework or the civilizational framework, which this script document is bringing here as a framework for the development of Malaysia, and I think also for the Islamic Ummah. As far as ISTAC is concerned, we are a platform not only to enhance the debates and discourse in Malaysia here, but also to be a platform to promote this Madani approach and model to the Islamic world and to the world for that matter, especially as we are an institute which use English language as a medium of instruction, and I think that will be something great. Inshallah, I will be starting with our first speaker today, our beloved Dr. Sri Dr. Mujahid Yusuf Rawa. Just a very brief, I think he's a well-known person and personality, and one of the great things he was known for is his concept of Rahmatan lil Alameen. When he was the Minister of Religious Affairs under the Prime Minister Department, all his time was spent actually to promote the concept of Rahmatan lil Alameen. And I think there were a lot of debates and discussions about it. And it's very much linked to the Madani framework, because one of the drivers of Madani, the 6 drivers of Madani framework is care and compassion. So our doctor, Dr. Mujahid, Dr. Sri Mujahid, actually he finished his study here in Malaysia, SK Kampong Jawa, and also SMK Penang Free School Penang, and from there straight to Al-Azhar, Misr, to finish his bachelor degree 1985-1990. Then he did his master's degree in human resources development from UPM, and he in 2007 he finished his PhD in Siyasa Sharia from the University of Malaya. Alhamdulillah, he combines between the Islam and also the conventional knowledge. Dato Sri Mujahid speaks many languages, including Bahasa Melayu, Arabic, English, and mashallah, he has accumulated a lot of experience when it comes to his work as a politician, as a minister, and also he has been a lecturer in some universities like the University Multimedia, and also he was very highly contributing in terms of lectures and talks promoting the Islamic approach as a scholar of Islam. Brothers and sisters, Dato Sri Mujahid also, when it comes to the political experience, he was also a member of the parliament, and he held many political positions, including, as I mentioned, the position of the minister. He internationally also has contributed a lot in promoting Malaysia and this concept of Rahmatan lil Alameen. Just to mention one of them, he in Malaysia here, he has introduced the Rahmah state policy, compassion state policy in 2019, and this one was under the Majlis Raja Raja. Many other things in the CV here, just I'm trying to pick up a few things which are relevant to us here. Internationally, he was actually also a member of the organization, this platform for freedom of religion and belief. And this is actually, this organization is more on parliamentarian international platform, so promoting also Malaysia. He was also a representative of Malaysia in many places, including Parliamentarian Union of Islamic Countries. And when it comes to lectures, he delivered many lectures, including in the Faculty Pengajian Cambridge, UK 2019, and also he delivered lectures on UN SDGs in the UN SDG Summit KL 2019, and also in Sarajevo University in Bosnia, and many other places. Without any delay, I call upon Dato Sri Dr. Mujahid to deliver his lecture. Go ahead.
Thank you very much, Professor Abdul Aziz. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Distinguished panelists, Professor Usman Bakar, Professor Aziz Azizan Baruddin, and rest of the faculty, and also my dear students, ladies and gentlemen. I actually felt very small and dwarf among the top academician and the top institution like ISTAC. But nevertheless, it is my duty to contribute a little bit of experience, not much, a little bit of experience to understand. My focus is more on how policy making process is concerned. I will not delve into the philosophical aspect of our topic today, but I will try to share my little experience on how such a great policy like Madani, Malaysia Madani, and a great policy like Rahmatan lil Alameen to be adopted into a policy, into a state policy. And the process is not as easy as we thought it is. I think Dr. Azizan was with me when she was the deputy chairman of the team, and I think he has shared a lot of my deep thoughts on this in our discussion as one of my ideas. So, Alhamdulillah, today I have the opportunity with Professor Usman Bakar, which I have read most of this article when I was still in school. And so it was an honor for me, it's an honor for me actually to be with all these distinguished professors and so academics. And of course, our beloved students, inshallah, I hope that most of you will graduate from this distinguished institution and become your standard is like the professors that you have here, or maybe better, inshallah, and spread the word or spread the word of Islam, peace, and rahmah to your people and to the entire world. Well, I have two slides that I want to share with you. This will be my first slides. And then maybe later when we have a second round, I will concentrate more on my little experience that I have gone through into policy making of Rahmat Amli. So there you go. The newly announced policy for the state, that is Malaysia Madani. And you very well know that the budget for 2023 named as Budget Malaysia Madani. So that in itself indicates such a significant and important role of Madani as a state policy. I know most of you have heard of the word Madani. Most of us have heard the word Madani. It's Arabic. If you want to really translate it into English, it's civil. When you say Negara Madani, the civil state. But I do not agree to such a simple translation of Madani to civil, because it has its own philosophical background rather than just translating it. For example, if you say civil, it comes back to the root of the English Western philosophy. But when you say Madani, it is deep rooted into the history of our Prophet ﷺ, where the name itself is derived from Medina. And we call Medina as Medina to Munawwara. That in itself signifies the most important aspect of its root when we mention the word Madani. But I do not think we are going to debate on that at this present moment. What it is I think before we want to understand further, it is a policy of the state. It's not a philosophical sort of a debate. But nevertheless, I will explain to you, before any policy of the state can be implemented or introduced, there should be the philosophy of such policy. So Malaysia Madani simply comes from the Madani concept, civil concept, if you might want to make it easy to understand. But there is always this component when you want to make it into a policy, you really have to make the people understand, not in the language of a philosopher, but in the language of a politician. So that is why Dr. Sri Anwar Ibrahim, our beloved Prime Minister, have coined the word and turn it into something that can be simplified, translated into policies. Okay. So as you see, Madani, although it doesn't represent the first alphabet of that Madani, it takes from somewhere in the middle of it. I don't know why. I didn't have the chance to ask Dr. Sri Anwar, why is that so? But nevertheless, we understand and we understood that M will refer to Kemampanan, simply means sustainability. Dr. Azizan can help us with that understanding. Sustainability is the in thing today. After what had happened in the COVID crisis, most of the experts will tell you that the coming catastrophe or calamity will be on the environment. So sustainability is actually the main front of any policy in any nation who wants to survive in this difficult moment. A represent kesejahteraan. Okay, kesejahteraan simply means what does it say in well-being? Well-being. Kesejahteraan. A nation with sejahtera, develop, materially, and all that. D is for daya cipta, which simply is innovation. You know very well that the nation cannot bloom without any innovation. whether it is a scientific, philosophy, or any other field that erects what we call civilization. Then you have the hormat. The A represent hormat, respect. Malaysia lives in a very diverse society, multi-religious, multi-ethnic, and you know very well that in our country, multi-religiosity and multi-ethnic has become politicized, or has been politicized to such an extent that it affects the harmony and the well-being of the society. Keyakinan N represents trust. Trust simply means you have to convince the people that what Madani is not what Islam Hadari was, for example. Islam Madani, Malaysia Madani is not what Wasatiyah was in those days. So it had to have impact of trust, because all this that we are discussing in terms of policy making, it cannot succeed unless you manage to insert trust, the people to the government, and the government must pay that trust to fulfill its honesty to help the people. And finally, ihsan. If you want to find any Arabic word, that's the only Arabic word we find. Ihsan means rahmah, actually. In fact, he mentioned it in his book. I suggest you read this book. It's not much of an intellectual, actually. It's just explaining what he wants. Right? I think Prof has gone through that. And he says simply here that ihsan is rahmah. This is where I come in. Okay? Ihsan is rahmah. So ihsan is more of a concept of insaniyah, kemanusiaan, manusiawi, and it represents one of the most important pillars, the 6 pillars of Malaysia Madani, that concentrates or imply to the importance and the significance of humanity in his pursuit of this policy. Then you see what are the context, or what are the focus that all this Madani will work within that focus. And if you read this book, you find there's a simple model that every time when he talks about kemampanan, then he will talk about what kemampanan will relate to economy and kewangan. What kemampanan will relate to perundangan, means legality. What kemampanan will relate to institution. What kemampanan will relate to education, for example. What kemampanan would relate to kemasyarakatan, society, culture, urban, and also rural. So that's why the book is there. It's just explaining all that 6 principles of Malaysia Madani into that 8 sectors or 8 focus. Next slide, please. That's the one that is actually originally was first launched before the Madani, if you realize. Okay. This is I think I Prof attended that launching. I attended that launching. It was prior to the election. Actually, the whole idea of Madani started off with English. And I don't know why it started off with English also. I have to ask PM why. Why are you thinking in English or in Malay? So the first official announcement of such policy was made earlier before the election. That is, as it is known, script framework. Basically, script framework is Madani framework. So maybe the PM had to find a right Malay word for that, so the people, the ordinary people, the layman can understand what he was trying to say. And exactly that is the translation. But I think this was more perfect because it takes the word from the first alphabet, and it's easy for us to remember than the Madani one. So sustainable, caring, compassionate, which is ihsan, respect, hormat, innovation, wisdaya, inovasi, ibda'i, prosperity, kesejahteraan, trust, keyakinan, and sustainability, kemampanan. Next one. Okay, now this is where I come in. I have told you earlier that I am more focused on the issue of policy making rather than talking about it in a more philosophical or academic way. As they say, you know, the politician, you have this relation of hate and love to them. You hate them because they are politicians, they talk too much, but you love them because you need them to implement all the thoughts that's in the minds of the professors. So you better be good with the politician. Okay. Well, I'll come back to my slides. On the process of policy making, okay, how do you, with such great philosophical underpinning of Madani, Rahmatan lil alam wa ma arsalnaka illa rahmatan lil alam, it's such a huge philosophical underpinning, it's such a huge understanding of it. How do we do that in order for such a grand thinking to be translated into policy, which is messy, you know, which is not pure. You know, these are pure things. When you say Rahmatan lil alamin, wow, very something pure. I mean, this is ayah. This is not a political statement. This is ayah. We say Madani, it comes from the thoughts of Ibn Khaldun earlier on about Madani, Madinat Munawwar, the Prophet. This is pure. But how, in the messy world of politics, nation building, do you put that into a policy? This is what I want to share with you. In such a complicated world of policy making, you are taking something pure, either from the ayah or either from coming from a thought of a great philosopher. How do you put them into context? This is what I want to share with you, a little bit of my little experience. Number one, you must start with philosophy, definitely, because that is the roots of all these ideas. The roots of Madani comes from the philosophical thought of it. Rahmatan lil alamin comes from the ayah and the philosophical understanding. So you cannot run away, you cannot try to avoid, in this complicated world of policy making, you must also stress on the root of this policy, which is philosophical. And as we are doing today, I thank you very much for ISTAC too. I think, as I know with Professor Aziz, Dr. Abdul Aziz, this is the first, I think, academic discussion on Madani. I don't know what the other things are, what the other people are doing. I don't know. But this ISTAC has, you know, responded to it very well and start the ball rolling. I mean, we have to sit to discuss philosophical understanding of things, so before it can really be translated. So that's what I did when I was the minister, when I introduced the policy of Rahmah or Rahmatul lil Alamin. It began with that philosophical understanding. But that doesn't stop there. Politicians don't like philosophy. Have you met politicians? When you speak to them, especially you guys academicians, and they will start to say the philosophy thing, and then the politician say, yes, what do you want? You know, this problem, politician problem. They want to see things done. What is it? What is it that you want? You know? But nevertheless, you cannot compromise, definitely. Although I am a politician myself, but I will never compromise on my academic background. I will try to blend them so that the meaning of such philosophy do not go, you know, in tangent with what we are talking about. So philosophy, next step is adaptation into context. If you read this book, Madani, and you read other books, philosophically, let's say if you read Yasir Auda, for example, he wrote a book on Al-Madaniyah il-Islam, or Ad-Dawla al-Madaniyah, for that matter. It's a totally different work. Yasir Auda, Anwar Ibrahim, in terms of, I didn't bring that book today, in terms of how one speaks of the philosophical, theoretical concepts, and one speak of policy making. But one cannot say the fact that Dr. Anwar did not elaborate on the philosophical side of it doesn't mean that Anwar Ibrahim did not understand the philosophical side of it, because this book comes based on that philosophical Okay. Adaptation of context is important because that would make you into that messy world of policy making, messy world of convincing the parliament, messy world of convincing like in Malaysia, if it is something that undermines authority, for example, the Islamic administration, we have to refer to the king, to the rulers, to the kings and the sultan. See, it's messy. Okay. Then you have to make your agencies understand what are you talking about. You can't imagine a minister talks about Madani and the agency doesn't understand what Madani is all about. It will take time because they are administrators. They are not students like you. They are administrators. How can they apply that into their context of an administrator? So adaptation of context is another process, which I will share maybe in the next slides. This one is just telling you what is the process. And then the formulation journey. Once you get adapt, like what Dr. Sri Anwar did, is the adaptation of into a state policy. You have to go to the formulation. How do you formulate that? And it's a journey by itself. And you are also urged to you're also urged to certain problems such as convincing the other ministries, for example, which I think today Madani has not started to convince other ministries. Okay, but that is a formulation journey. I can share with you. I had to present it among the rulers, 8 of the rulers. I had to present to them. They were, it's like in the Bible, you know, you present and you have only 10 minutes. The king doesn't have much time, you know. So you have to explain to them, like in the Bible. They asked me, this king, another asked me, Sultan Perak will ask me, Sultan Selangor will ask me. You have to communicate in that 10 minutes to convince them when they go to the full council of the Majlis Raja Raja, the Rulers Council. One of the agenda is to pass this agenda. And when it does, it means so big to me that it has become an official Islamic administration policy to the country. That's why Professor Azizan had to follow, because as an agency for Pentadbiran Islam or the Islamic administration, these become a formal policy that is accepted by the Rulers Council. Then comes the best part, is budgeting. You cannot explain to the public without having budget, telling them programs, explaining to them. And explaining to them again, it's not as explaining to the administrator, explaining to the kampung people, explaining to the rural people, explaining to the to the parents. So these are problems which can be also helped if the budget is convincing. And that budget, for example, I think today I didn't get the exact specific amounts of budget for Madani. I think there are specific amount of funds, which is huge, I think. So, and that is the process, budgeting. Yeah, I got 10 million, which is small actually. During my time, I got 10 million, but it didn't accomplish because, the Sheraton move, all this political instability, there was this coup d'etat and all that. So we abandoned the project. 10 million gone. Okay. Implementation and programs is huge also. And finally, evaluation, whether that program is successful, midterm, quarter, and which I did during my time. All agencies must come up with their achievement within a certain period of time. And that is to evaluate whether our program is successful or not. Next. I believe this will be the last one. I don't know whether you have seen this or not, but the Cambridge University has seen it. The Beijing Foreign Studies University have seen it. The Sarajevo International University has seen it. And most of the international universities have seen it. And basically, to wrap up the model of what I said about compassionate state, not the Madani. But I will come up with the next slide that I tried to combine, Professor, the two, Madani and Ramah in our next slide after the second round. The compassionate states is the thrust of everything which we aspire to achieve. It has been supported by 3 pillars, which is the philosophy of Rahmatan lil Alamin in itself, and all the things that need to be imparted to the people on what Rahma means. Alhamdulillah, today we have Rahma product. Yeah? Today, if you, I think most of the university students will like that. They have Menu Rahma, which is cheap, you know. They have this Bakur Rahma, and they have more of this Rahma. Even in the budget, the Prime Minister mentioned about Balia Rahma, the youth, Rahma youth. Okay. Alhamdulillah, I felt so great that even though it didn't go very well during my time because of the Sheraton Mall, but Alhamdulillah, we now heard the word Rahma has been promoted into a state policy, which I'm very proud of. Then you have the Maqasid Sharia. What are the main guidelines for such big lost bit of thinking into that policy? What are the guidelines? Maqasid Sharia is the answer. Maqasid Sharia tells you about why rather than what. So it will explain to you the rationale behind it. And of course, Islam is built upon understanding of things with al-fahmu, not just something that you follow. And especially in politics, you have to make people understand. So Maqasid Sharia will deal with a lot of things. We even have the Maqasid Town Hall, because as I remember, I go around all the countries, what we call the Maqasid Town Hall, where I explain the need of Maqasid in order to implement such policy, which I think in this institute, they have a Maqasid research, which is good, that I would advise all the students here to really go deep into Maqasid, because Maqasid will answer all the problems in terms of the contemporary political, economic, and social problems. Then you have the model Malaysia. This is important, Prof, because I'm not talking about Islam as being implemented in Masr, for example. I'm not talking about Islam as being implemented in Jazair, for example. I'm talking about Islam as being implemented in Egypt or in Syria or in Saudi Arabia or in the Khalij state or even in Iran or even in Pakistan. But no, I'm talking about a model of what we call Malaysian model, a local context. Kearifan lokal, as Dato' Syahno Ibrahim would always mention it, because modern Malaysia is so important. It is our product to the world. They can learn from us, and as much as we can learn from them. Then you have the 8 sectors that I put in, which is not important here. The most important thing is, you see that colorful round thing, that is the SDG, sustainability. I inserted into the compassionate policy with SDG. Why? SDG is so close to the meaning of compassionate. And then finally, you have the Kuliyatul Khamsa, which is preservation of property, preservation of religion, in every which way you want to organize it, preservation of life, preservation of mind, preservation of ancestry, and preservation of property. That Kuliyatul Khamsa helps me to guide me that all this policy will not go against the maqasid that we aspire within our principle. I think that will be my first round. Inshallah, if there is time, I will share with you the next round with another slide. Wallahu alam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you, Dato' Sri Mujahid, for this very important introduction in this discussion about Madani. And I think he has already given us the aspect of the policy making and how things being translated from philosophy, epistemology to the application. That's very crucial and very important. I guess a lot of ideas have been put by Dato' Sri Mujahid, and inshallah we'll come back to them in our discussions. Once again, I welcome all of the professors who are there in the Zoom and the YouTube and the participant. Please, thank you for joining us. Our second speaker today, I think, is our great professor, Professor Osman Bakar. I don't know whether you need to know anything about Prof. Osman, or he is already a well-known great scholar. As Mujahid said, al-ma'ruf la yu'arraf. The one who is known, no need to say anything about him. I wanted just to say that our beloved Professor Osman Bakar is the holder of Al Ghazali Chair in ISTAC here for civilizational studies, and actually he is one of the great Muslim scholars who are included in these 500 most influential Muslims in the world today. And I think his books like Classification of Knowledge in Islam and Islamic Civilization in the Modern World are taught in many universities worldwide. So, Prof. Osman, go ahead.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Professor Aziz Abdul, as the chair and moderator, fellow panelists, Dr. Jahid, and Professor Wazan, colleagues, lecturers and students, and out there who are watching this event online, including from outside Malaysia. To all of them, thank you. I agree with everything with what Dr. Jahid has mentioned, has spoken. Everything. So what I intend to do, therefore, is to complement what he has already done. And I think, although he said he is talking more from the perspective of policy, but actually he has blended well both theory and the practice, the philosophy, and the policy thing, but of course confined to Rahmatan lil Alamin policy during his administration. Of course, as we have been told by our chairman, this is the first forum on, not the first step forum, but the first as far as Madani issues is concerned, and the title is the Madani framework
For civilizational development.
For civilizational development. Well, actually, today, since the first, I think we cannot really go into the main substance of that policy. Just to talk about the framework, right? This is okay, and basically that's what, like to say, Muzahid, emphasizing on the concentrating on the framework. And there are many of you who were, especially from the outside Malaysia, in this room, who do not know the situation in Malaysia, the background, the evolution of government policy through the different prime minister. All right, I think I would say that's right. Yeah, because you are students. I mean, you are students of political science, students of theology. Actually, the topic is very, very important. Very important. Now we have been talking about who we want to establish Islam as a way of life, as a state, as a civilization. But how do we do it? How to translate that into reality, into social reality? That is the question. Yeah? So I think, of course, in Malaysia, his own way throughout his more than 6 decades of history, it has approaches. And I've written somewhere, published in the journal published by IEIS, the Institute of Advanced Research. I talk about the Islam policy the Islam policy of the different governments. So it's not a question of one prime minister, the new prime minister, I think over, is forgetting the previous Islam policy. No, as is generally the case, the question of broadening, encompassing the previous one. Some of you maybe were not yet born. The first prime minister of Malaysia, Tunku Abdul Rahman, he became prime minister from 1957 until 1969. Until 1969. That was what? That was about 12 years. He had some policy, although it's not declared in a very, but those who have studied, those there was. What was the Islam policy? It was meninggikan syiar Islam. That was it. Well, then, why do they build masjid, mosque? Meninggikan syiar Islam. Why did they have the tabung haji that time? That's not small outfit. It's to have pilgrims to go to Mecca. To have the government have it. Of course, today they say no. It should not be done because Islam, Malaysia is a secular country, and therefore, of course. But you mean that you say that Islam is the official religion of the country, and just be happy that with that? I mean, the society, the Muslim society, the Muslim community has its own needs, and for that time, that's it. Then came the second prime minister, Tun Abdul Razak. Well, what was that? What's sort of Islam policy? Islam pembangunan. To the extent that Tun Abdul Razak was declared as the father of development, bapa pembangunan. Yeah. Yeah, of course. I mean, they bring in the national to the coalition government so that, but they only have, no? They only have. Yes, it is true that for the third prime minister, Tumsin on, you see more a kind of he continuing the policy of Tun Razak. So you cannot really identify one very clear Islam policy in this time. But then comes Dr. Tun Razak. It was Islamization policy, penerapan nilai-nilai Islam. Yeah. But the meninggikan syiar never stopped. That continued. The pembangunan continued. Yeah, the pembangunan development continued. And then opening, broader penerapan nilai Islam. All right. Then in Tun Badawi, there is Islam Hadari. Looking now, Islam as a civilization. And it's very much connected to what we have here, the Madani. Yeah. So in other words, so basically, to emphasize to Muslims that our concern with Islam is much broader, not just a question of praying 5 times a day, fasting, the rituals. No, Islam is also civilization. Therefore, we want to get that approach, to understand that approach. Then came Dr. Sri Najib. Again, it was, if I were to identify that, of course, it was clear, but then it was not really given emphasis. Yeah. But in terms of something from associated with Islam, it was clear the moderation. Yeah, Islam, the moderate Islam. And then, well, that sorry to say, I'm not that, and then in the two prime ministers after that, they cannot really identify something very, very clear. But now comes even during the Pakistan government, the 22 months, that magic 22 months, when as explained by Dr. Mujahid, it is that the Rahmatan lil Alamin. I mean, that is an aspect of the teaching of Islam, but it's going to be translated into a government policy. And now, and then finally, we have the Madani now. So in a way, the significance of the Madani is that it becomes inclusive. It becomes inclusive thing. In other words, without neglecting what has been done before. Synthesis. Basically, the Madani Jana is synthesis of the various elements of Islam. But I think what is important for the Muslims to write today is that, as pointed out, emphasized by Dr. Zahir, it is a difficult job to translate in the teaching of Islam as a religion, to translate that into a government policy. Of course, government policy means that not everything that is taught about Islam, about that doctrine, is going to be implemented. You have to make choices. You have to to choose which one to emphasize. All right. After all, Rahmatan, you can imagine how broad the doctrine is, and yet now they have the courage, all the time, to translate into government policy, and that was difficult. But luckily here, since Rahmatan lil Alameen, the mercy and compassion is a second driver, of script. The script and Madani, the second driver of script, the second principle, the moving principle, the prime mover of Madani. That helps. That helps. So in other words, now with the new policy, Datuk Mujahid is not out of place. He's not out of place. He's needed. He's needed. At least one screw. If not 6 screws, at least one screw, he can provide the help and the contribution. So that's I think is important. In other words, when you have in the Muslim world one general in the army stage a military coup, the declared president or whatever, and then you get the support of the people saying, "No, we want to become an Islamic state," and the first thing they do is just cut the hands of thieves and the stones, the electors. Is that the way to civilization? This is a difficult way, the more difficult way, to formulate policies and to talk about how to implement it, how to make people understand. This is an intellectual journey. This is also a moral journey. It is a journey. Through 5-year journey, in the case of 22 months only, and hopefully you have the 5-year journey, and then in that 5-year journey, you can do a lot. But you cannot achieve all what the philosophers, all what the scholars said about Madani. The literature of Madani, you have to implement all literature of Madani? No, that will take decades, But at least to be sure that we have the framework. We have the right framework. This framework makes sense. It is rational. It appeals to those who are and who are sincere. If you are sincere, what is there to object to this? So I think it is very, very important thing as far as the framework. Of course, I've come across already since I've been invited already for a number to talk about this various audiences. We must understand the word Madani. Madani may be used as in the sense of a word with a general meaning. Madani in a general sense of the word, as it is understood in the Arabic dictionary, as understood in the philosophical works of the Muslim philosophers like Al-Farabi, Ibn Muskawi, and Ibn Khaldun. All right, let's talk about that in general sense, not specific to address to a particular society, a particular program. No, it's not. This is used in general sense because they were concerned about the concept itself. What is the meaning of Madani? So in the case of Farabi, he was the founder of the science of Madani, the Ilmu Madani. Basically, he wants to emphasize that Well, in most of its majority, Madani refers to what I would call civilization, pertaining to civilization. Because Madani use both in adjective and for noun form, referring to referring to one of course is civility, the question of civil, the question of the refinement, the question of humanness. In other words, a wide range of meaning of Madani that covers already by our scholars in the past. But now, the Madani now has a technical sense, specific meaning referring to the government policy of Anwar Ibrahim's administration. His administration now push this, then Madani becomes a technical term, a specific meaning referring to his government policy for the next 5 years, and he identified the main pillars of this Madani policy, and he said 6 drivers of script of the 6 principles of Madinah policy: sustainability, care and compassion, respect, innovation, prosperity, and trust. This basically what we have the English version, we have the Malay version, but it's the English version. We have these 6 principles. Oh, 6, only 6. But all the big ideas about Madani, dozens of them. Just take, for example, very important idea of happiness, which is in the science, described in the science of civilization of Al-Farabi. Yeah. In other words, he goes into the spirit of civilization building. Why do we build civilization? Yeah, we can have what we call this distant aims, goals, and the near goal, but this underlying is happiness. Is it important? It is important. Yeah, but the government policy cannot go into that kind of philosophy. But leaders, the movers of the Madani policy, of course, they can read about happiness. It's important for them to know about happiness. Yeah, because it will help. In other words, to know things about happiness, what things bring about happiness. That is useful. That is useful. Even though not stated, it's not a driver. It's not a driver. It's framework. Although some countries now want to find indicators of happiness, so it becomes related to policy. So Singapore, our neighbor, Malaysia's neighbor, is now coming up with kind of what are the measurable quantifiers, indicators of happiness. How do you know that a person is happy or not? And of course, that was inspired by the King of Bhutan. The King of Bhutan was the first modern leader to talk about this, right? Well, of course, I mean, actually, Dato' Sri, actually, our first Prime Minister, Tunku Abdul Rahman, he talked a lot about happiness. Yeah. I remember when I was young in school, I read the newspaper. He was often asked by the reporters, what kind of Prime Minister you want to be? And I said, I just want to be the happiest Prime Minister in the world. Very simple. Very simple. If my people are happy, I'm happy. But simple, but very profound. It's very profound. Okay. No, I better what now? All right. No. Yeah. Okay. I think I'm better stop there. We have another round or so. Maybe we can touch a little bit about some comments only, because I can't go into the substance of the 6 drivers. Still trying to talk about the framework, not just about the framework. So just to compliment for 10 minutes. Sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Prof. Osman. I think this is very great. Another aspect added by Professor Osman to what has been mentioned by Dr. Sri Mujahid. I think he focused on two important things that we can keep in mind. One is in Malaysia here, in particular, as a multiracial society, how the concept or the idea of Islam or the worldview of Islam being articulated in the government policies since Tunku Abdurrahman and then come to others. And we are here talking about Madani framework, which we are hoping to integrate and connect all the dots and make it something that can be a model, not only for Malaysia here in implementation in Malaysia, but for benefit is for the Ummah and the other countries, inshallah. So I think this is a great idea, and it's clear that how Islam being articulated in Malaysian policies here has its specific uniqueness. And that's, I think, what we can explore in the future from all these type of concepts. I think that's really good. And also, Prof. Osman stress on the importance of, though we talk about policies and actions and indicators, we need also to have that philosophical background and narrative that can put things together, because you can talk about compassion or sustainability or innovation, but in what context, in what narrative, and for what purpose? This is actually very crucial. We go to our third scholar, Professor Dr. Azizan binti Baharuddin, I think well known in ISTAC in Malaysia and in the Islamic world also, and in the world. So will be hard, but let me just mention a few things about our prof. Actually, Prof. Azizan Baharuddin received her bachelor degree in biology from the University of Tasmania, Australia, and master from University College London, and also her PhD in philosophy of science and Islam from the University of Lancaster, United Kingdom. This tells a lot about our professor, multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary background. She specializes in several areas such as environmental ethics, religion and sustainable development, Islam and science, bioethics, interfaith, intercivilizational dialogue, many other things. Just to mention some of the awards that she took, one of them is the Federal Territory Ma'a al-Hijra Award in 2016. Prof, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Professor Abdul. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirrahmanirrahim. Salatu wassalamu ala asyrafil anbiya wal mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Wa sallallahu alaihi wa sallam. Kepada Profesor Abdul, kepada Profesor Osman, kepada Dr. Sri Dr. Mujahid, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very, very good afternoon. First of all, thank you so very much. Alhamdulillah. I am so privileged to have been invited by the organizers to be with you today, just to share some reflections on the topic of our forum today. I like what Prof. Osman says, I fully concur with the previous two speakers, so Prof. Abdul Aziz comments on the topic. And I think the dimension that I would like to add on, especially Prof, is the dialogical. Yeah. So after this, I guess everybody will be carrying this book around. I know it's in Malay, but there is also the translation. For me, it's not difficult reading at all. And like was mentioned before, especially two previous speakers, the Madani framework for me is showing us how things can be done. So, so sorry if I am abusing language a little bit. To be Madanid, a society that is Madanid, is actually to be civilized. You want to be a civilized society, right? So you need Madani concepts. And the acronym, the 6 pillars, and was mentioned by Prof. Asma already. The first one begins with sustainability, kemampanan, and we go through the 6, which we also showed already. The last one, ihsan. So I will focus on these 2, the Prof. Asma, kalau Ibani. And by all means, this query, this ask, this debate, what I will share with you. But coming, I guess, from the Center of Civilizational Dialogue, which many of you perhaps may have forgotten or may not know, the impetus for the establishment of the Center for Civilizational Dialogue University of Malaya, which is now 26 years old, was by the current Prime Minister himself and also Prof. Osman Bakat. So the dialogue component for me is very difficult. Intra-civilizational, intra-Islamic dialogue, and also inter-civilizational dialogue. So Prof said many times, Malaysia is a plural society, not to be confused with pluralism. Some people are, making the word pluralism a kind of ghost, a kind of demon. So we're talking, when we say plural, we're saying many diverse societies in Malaysia, many ethnic groups, many faith groups. So I just want to begin with that note. On page 26 of his book, the Prime Minister says, we begin to get rid of damage and misbehavior by enculturing the culture of exchange of views through, we use the word polylogue. And I look up what is polylogue. Polylogue is a speech delivered by several persons. An idea that is talked about, discussed by many people. So this is something new for us, and we feel especially encouraged because my question is, yeah, it's good. We are talking about Madani being an Islamic concept, Arabic word, and so on and so forth. But I think we also have to link it with what's happening with the rest of the world. And I bring here just 2 simple books. Yeah, one is called The Sustainability Revolution. That is now well, when I say Western, the West can also be here in the East. You know that. So we are not like evaluating people. So that is now what is among the enthusiasts, activists, or people who are trying to make sustainable development goals achievable. They talk about the sustainability revolution, which needs holistic approaches. So there has to be spiritual intelligence as well as physical intelligence as well as emotional intelligence. Everything must fit together. So what, in simple words, I also think that this is about reclaiming our humanity. So I will also be pegging many of my ideas to the fact of our being human, because the meaning of being human is slowly being lost. It's not lost to a lot of degree today. And with the progress in artificial intelligence, last year, World Philosophy Day, the theme was the meaning of being human in the age of AI. Okay? Another book is Awakening the Soul, a deep response to a troubled world. So many feel that the soul has lost its meaning. People have lost what it means to have a soul. What is a soul? So these writers like him are saying that we have to go back to the narratives of the faith traditions. They don't want to use the word religion, because the word religion in some quarters has become a 4-letter word. It's become a, no, we don't want religion. So we know this, but today we're not debating that. Yeah, so what I want to say, inshallah, in the time given, I will share with you some reflections on this topic by linking it to the SDG goals, as Alhamdulillah explained by Dr. Suri just now, the sustainable development goals concept, and also some ideas from a few scholars that I think are pertinent in making the Madani concept a reality and more meaningful for many of us. Inshallah, if time permits, I will also be putting some ideas from the book of Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan, 2011. He just left us with week ago, 2 days ago, yeah. And his last book was Corruption and Hypocrisy in Malay Muslim Politics, the Agency of Moral Ethical Transformation. I am bringing this to our attention not to make people feel bad, but when Muslims talk about being truly human, we cannot run away from knowing God, knowing Allah. You are, we are nothing. We cannot achieve Madani, we cannot achieve much if we are not together with Allah. And what does Professor Kamal say we have to do very quickly at the moment? So I would like to share that, inshallah, in a couple of minutes. Yeah? So firstly, I shall speak about how the Madani framework for development is very much related to the global current attempts at making the sustainable development goals succeed or become achievable. And I shall attempt to show that the Madani framework, when successful, will become a kind of model for the world, both Islamic and otherwise, to emulate. So I'm sorry, I keep on referring you back to the non-Muslim world, because by the normal statistics, that we find on the internet, we are 25% of the world. Even though some people argue we are more than 25% of the world's population, which means there's a greater part of humankind that needs our da'wah. And I also am trying to promote this idea that to do dialogue, because dialogue is also not acceptable to some people. You don't do interfaith dialogue, you don't sit at the same table with people of other faiths. So I say this out loud because I think if you want to make Madani concept work, you need to be able to explain who you are and what you believe in. And when it comes to ihsan, you cannot run away from ihsan in the Quran, ihsan in the Hadith. And my question is, what's wrong with telling your neighbors who are non-Muslims about the Quran and the Hadith? So this is not being done enough, and we think that no, it's a common courtesy to not impose. It's not imposition. But then again, as human nature is, when you want to speak about who you are, you need to listen to what that person thinks that he is. If you want him to know where you are coming from, you would want him to know that you are also interested in where he is coming from. So again, with the greatest respect and with great humility, Professor Osman Bakar in the 1990s started the Pay Dialogue. I think it was Islam and Confucianism Dialogue, Prof. Osman. And I think the impact is very global, and it was to react to Samuel P. Huntington's thesis that in the world now and in the future, there will be a clash of civilizations. That's what is going to happen. And Prof. Osman and other scholars at that time think that no, Islam has another theory, peaceful coexistence. And all this is background knowledge so that you understand that this Madani concept that is spoken about today was not born in 2 days. It did not come out of the author in few months. No, it started long before this, especially in the 1990s, I think, correct me if I'm wrong. So right from the onset, I would urge all of us to be prepared to dialogue with other people, to be prepared to dialogue among ourselves. Because just as in the economic sense, in Malaysia, you have T20, M40, B40, you categorize people like that. I'm sorry to say, in terms of our understanding, there are also categories, I think. And I say this again with the greatest compassion, greatest respect. My own understanding might be defective at this current time, so please correct me. So I like very much the idea that you have to be engaging each other, you have to be talking to each other, and please let's not be judgmental. And some people say that in Malaysia, no, we have the constitution, we have the Majlis Raja-Raja. Yeah, we're not touching all those things. But for Malaysia to remain what it is, this kind of principles need to be talked about, need to be understood, especially by the younger generation. And how is that going to happen? And it begins with the Muslims themselves. So although much of what Professor Kamal wrote about is pertaining to the Malay Muslim community, his words and advice nevertheless do the interests of many from the non-Malay Muslim community. So this is the thing that touches me. When Muslims are excited about Madani, about Wasatiyah, about so many things, do you ever think of your neighbors who are non-Muslims? What are they thinking? What questions they have in their mind? Do they feel threatened? Are they perfectly happy? Are they well understood? So there were articles in the Star newspaper, for example, Prof, and also programs on Astra Wani, whereby non-Muslim analysts, if you like, had the opportunity to actually ask people like Prof Kamal, and hopefully after this, more non-Muslim hosted programs to invite Dr. Suri, Prof, and all of us here. And I call it, when we speak about Islam, positive chauvinism. Positive chauvinism. I'm chauvinistic, yes, of course. But my chauvinism is a positive one. And I think it is, there's so many things that we can relate to what I say here in the Quran Hadith itself, but I think it begins with our own understanding of who and what we are here. So, although the Prime Minister did not dwell on dialogue per se, to us at the Center for Civilizational Dialogue, at least this is something that needs to be worked on, and we need the support of everyone here. And of course, there is something called the science of dialogue, and when you speak to the theologians or ulama, they will speak to you about the restrictions and the adab. You don't cross certain boundaries. When you do interfaith dialogue, there are certain SOPs that you have to follow. You don't simply interchange ideas and make comments. Yeah, ada pantang larang in the Malay vocabulary. And you would have heard perhaps the fatwa read out by the His Royal Highness the Sultan of Johor, I think, regarding Muslims attending celebrations by people of other ethnic groups. So there was a reaction by a Christian leader, and he said, "This is good. This is what we did before." So the pantang larang and all of this have not been explained. The prohibitions, the limitations have not been explained. So my point here is, Madani concept really needs to be explained. If you keep on saying that this is Islam, yeah, why not? It is Islamic. And have you forgotten that the Prophet is the Prophet for the whole of the globe? Now, when I say that, certain people quickly reminded me, but I was too of Ummah. Yeah, so be it. But do you deny the fact that that Prophet, Muhammad SAW, is sent, that to say it up now, right? Rahmatan lil alamin, not just for humans, also non-humans. So my call here, my plea here is, can we start being human and humane? Which is the spirit of Madani. Without being humane or human, you cannot be compassionate. Yeah? And already, if you read the works of Mr. Samsa Amri, the father of the blueprint for national unity in Malaysia, he's saying that there is a huge problem of trust deficit amongst the races in Malaysia. So who is disrupting who? Okay, so most critically, I think, is the distrust of the other. Why do we still suffer Islamophobia and all that? Because we are not working enough to make people feel comfortable with what we're saying. Yeah? So in any case, I go back to the whole idea of sustainable development goals, 17 goals. You can easily look it up what it is. The first two is zero hunger, zero poverty. But we also know at the same time that every day the gap between rich and poor keeps on increasing. Right? So how do we achieve these 17 goals, beginning with the first two, when there is none, there is no narrative, no talk about ethics and morality. So when Dr. Sri spoke about Maqasid and all of that, it's trying to imbue this SDG framework with ethics and values. And this is our strength. And we must rise to the occasion. And everybody now is talking about the need to review the economic system. There's a lot of talk about the Islamic financing, Islamic compassionate banking. So, and I think, if I'm not mistaken, I heard the speech in Parliament regarding the budget. I heard the Prime Minister saying, we need some group to lead the so-called alternative economic system. So, ISTAC maybe after this can start a series of talks about this. And as quoted, as mentioned by a researcher in the School of Asian Studies, South Asian Studies in Singapore, he describes the situation. He says, for the Prime Minister, Dr. Ahmad Ibrahim, Western theories of development actually excluded a moral vision of men from their premises, and obsessions to bring crass materialism, loss of spirituality, decline of morality, and degeneration of character. So there was a kind of criticism of pure Western, non-theological theories of development. And the Prime Minister went on to envision a moral economy that would complement efficiency with welfare, growth with redistribution, and development with compassion. Towards this end, he stipulates just administration by the state to tackle the inequities of the market. So you see, there's a huge body of knowledge on economics that needs to be worked upon by those people in the Islamic tradition, in the Islamic world, that are well imbued in this kind of knowledge. So when you want to say there has to be justice, there has to be compassion, there has to be mutual trust, this is all in the pillars of the Madani concept, and not has happened in terms of exploiting and justifying. And the good news is that the probability or the acceptability of these alternative ideas from the Madani concept is very, very empirically verifiable. Some of us don't like the fact that what you bring science in, the Quran is not a book science. We really don't need science to support. I beg your pardon. Okay? And I think we learn from teachers like Professor Mamaka. Nature is a second book of Allah, of God. You read, nature is full of science. So you have to read those science. And nature does not include in the context that we're talking about today, just physical nature. And this is the complaint of Prime Minister, the current Prime Minister, that when scientists speak about sustainability, it's always about nature. It's always about floods, how we destroy forests. They're not talking about the human beings that is supposed to be talking about nature. So we have some certain rivers that keep on being polluted year after year after year after year, and they are lost. Bountiful loss. So what happens to the implementation of those laws? So the Prime Minister is saying, yeah, you need the science of things, you need the scientists, but then again, are the scientists aware of their, everybody knows this word, that they are also Khalifa? Is society aware that they are Khalifa of nature? And what does that mean? And Surah Al-Rum, ayat 41, is forever being shared by all kinds of speakers. The ayat that says it is now very apparent that facade destruction has caused by man's hands on land, sea, and where else? Land and sea. Yeah. And Allah deliberately asked us to taste the result of that destruction. That's right. So that we do tawbah. And tawbah is turning of the heart. Now, heart, the cow. This is something that in the normal narrative of things, it is not there. Yet Madani is talking about his son, and where does his son come from? So that is why even from the Western tradition, they are talking about reclaiming your soul. They're talking about the heart being a very important instrument, having a supra intelligence of its own. Some scientists say the heart is more intelligent than the brain. The heart is not lie. So again, there's a lot of room here for combining secular knowledge, conventional knowledge, and Islamic knowledge. So finally, I just want to share what Professor Muhammad Kamanasan said. So I think we need not. I do not know. So some people might be upset with the title of the book. But I think let's not do that. This is not a time for being emotionally affected. This is a time for working, like what Osman said. We need to make things work. So he says, I quote, one of the benefits, he speaks about Zikrullah. Zikrullah. And people don't speak about Zikrullah in public forum. Yeah, so I'm sorry, I want to contribute this little bit of sharing. One of the benefits of being engaged in Zikrullah, remembrance of Allah, is that we become aware of what Allah commands and prohibits, His likes and dislikes, the halal and the haram, elements in life, and His promises as well as His threats, so that we will be able to increase deeds, connections, which will earn His favor, and avoid doing anything that goes against His teachings, thus averting His displeasure or wrath, particularly in the hereafter. With Zikrullah, Muslim leaders and would-be leaders would also experience the meaning of living at the levels of taqwa and ihsan. The levels when they become conscious that Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala always sees them in whatever situation they may be, and this is part of the definition of ihsan, as everyone knows. Their hearts become more vigilant against satanic delusions of becoming prone to committing immoral or unethical acts. Their rasa malu, consciousness, and attitude are forever present and become more sensitized than before. They will be included by the grace and mercy of Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala among the pious servants, the muttaqun, who are liked by their compassionate master. The Quran mentions several types of personalities which Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala loves and which Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala does not love. So today people are crying everywhere because of corruption. For every million that is taken away from where it's supposed to belong, we deprive so much medical services, we deprive so much building of schools, we deprive so much for the rakyat. This is the problem. And yet they're talking about pursuing growth. Okay, it's okay, pursue. But if you understand the dynamics of resources, the cyclical condition of resources are just that much. So if you take away what is not yours, you're depriving something, the rakyat, the citizens, from what is due to them, right? So ihsan is very critical, and that is why it is part of Madani. And for Muslims at least, how do you reach ihsan? How do you reach it? How do you get it? Question of how is so difficult. So if you look at the civil service that Muslim knows this, how many percent are Muslims? More than 50 that Muslim, definitely. So if just a small percentage of this can develop themselves into the Muslimun, into the Muqsitun, because that I won't take too much time from Aziz. You all are more familiar with this than I am. The Muqtaqun, the Mutahhirun, Mutatahhirun. So these are the people, these are the believers who do the good works, who are God conscious, keep themselves pure. You might say this is kindergarten stuff. This is not policy level. Why not? Why can't it be policy level? Why is it that in some companies, first thing you do in the morning is to have motivation talk? You have common prayers. So this is the Japanese. You know what the Japanese people do when they want to get the workers to be risen up in their spirit, out of that. So the opposite of that, if we don't do Zikrullah, and of course Zikrullah, you can have a long chapter on it. How do you do it? To your salat, to your everything. Allah does not love the opposite of that, the zalimun, the wrongdoers, the evildoers, those who commit injustice. Allah does not love the mu'tadun, the transgressors, the aggressors. Allah does not love the kafirun, the rejectors, the unbelievers, the disbelievers, those who reject. Indeed, Allah does not love the mufsidun, those who do mischief, those who cause corruption. Really, you are more well-known than me. I don't know. This is what I think. This Madani concept is like a bridge between Iman and Amal. Yeah, between theory and practice. And if this succeeds at the national level, inshallah, Pak Osman says maybe 5 years, inshallah we'll achieve something. At the SDG narrative worldwide, Malaysia would have succeeded in becoming a role model in how to make the SDG achievable, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goals achievable. Because the recent conference of parties in Egypt, it took place last year, it failed. There was no success, there was no record of any of the goals being achieved. In fact, the opposite is the case. So it's like, do you remember the statement by the United Nations Secretary? He says that we are all marching into climate hell. And some people will say, is he being apa tu, is he being what do you call it? Is he joking? Or does he believe what he's saying? But actually, all the warning signs are there. In 2030, already in Malaysia Press today, Malaysia newspaper, you don't have to go to outside country. The cities that would be underwater in not so long from now are already listed. So what is happening? We are actually in denial. So I just feel that, inshallah, there is no time for feeling guilty or are you talking about me? I'm not like that. It's not time for denying, for being in denial. And as to our non-Muslim neighbors, we have to bring them into the discussion. We have to allow them to ask us questions. I don't understand it. I don't understand. The Islamophobia has to be addressed. How so? By you talking to them, by you facing them, by you listening to their complaints. And this is what, in the forward, the writer, the author of the Madani framework is telling us to do. So I beg your pardon, I apologize if there are extremes in what I said. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Thank you, Prof. Azizan, for this very enlightening, actually, kind of very deep, actually, reading of the script. You know, because she, Prof. Azizan, I think, touched on another important aspect of this Madani framework for civilizational development. She speak about many things, but just to highlight, to stress three things which have been mentioned by Prof. I think she was talking about the importance of dialogue and inclusiveness and reflecting the mercy to all mankind at the practical level, where other religions, other cultures, other people, other philosophies can engage in dialogue, in discussion for the implementation, actually, of this model. Number two, talking about the lost human. We are looking, because in the end, all this can be summarized into the people, whether you are vicegerent or not, whether you are value driven or economy driven. This is why I think script, if you really read, not from maybe the perspective of a politician only, you read it from the perspective of a scholar, there are a lot of ideas inside there. And I think the idea of the universality of the Islamic concepts. And though we are talking about implementation in Malaysia model, but the implication will be world. So because of this, our work now should also look global while we are building the local, because it's not just for Malaysia. I think that's really great, Prof. We have another 30 minutes to go for some discussions and deliberations. I hope those who wanted to comment or be very brief and straightforward so that our scholars can enrich more the discussions here. I have several questions here in the YouTube and also in the Zoom here, but maybe I can open first if we have any one to ask a question here in the room before I go to the Zoom, inshallah. Anyone? Go ahead. Alaikum salam.
Understand about this concept of Madani. And in this concept of Madani, people from civilized society living in today's world today,
We understand Madani is come from the Arabic words about civilized society, the society that highly educated, and the society that built the nation is on the nation building, like Professor Samsul Amri used to say about nation building. On that concept, how they able to adopt and adapt this concept Madani to the Islamic perspective. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think any comment? Okay, maybe
Can we know the name of the?
in fact, can you just mention your name, brother? Okay, I have another question in the YouTube, which is almost similar. Okay, it says here, if Madani emphasizes knowledge-based policy and leadership, then is the idea of Islamization of knowledge relevant in building this Madani knowledge-based approach? So trying to see how is the link between Islam and the Madani policy. So I think, can we have another third question? Prof. Murad, go ahead.
I do have a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
I just want to thank the three panelists for bringing up pertinent themes on Madani, for introducing many of us on the video on policy for present government. I would like to mention that Madani is part of a longer narrative that was part of our show. It's not 65 years old.
Yeah.
It has been around for thousands of years, at least 1,400 years. And we look at also from the east and the west, we find similar callings for a better society, a more vibrant civilization. And in that sense, we look at some of the discourses before World War II. Criticisms on liberal capitalism, criticisms on post-industrialized society, criticisms on the Enlightenment. These are criticisms for a Madani society in a sense. It's not exclusively Islam. It's also non-Muslim in the wider context of the word. It's also non-state-centric. I think Malaysia would have to reconstitute Madani not only within the nation state of Malaysia, but to the region as a whole, because we are talking about Indonesia, we're talking about the Philippines, we're talking about both Muslim majority and minority populations and non-Muslim populations. I think that it has to be expanded and understood. And I expect that many people will have many expectations of Madani. I'm thinking aloud. One is happiness index, prosperity index. I think about 20, 15 years back, Bhutan and the other initiatives. And I think Malaysia also has spoken about a prosperity index, but I think it's still born. Perhaps this would be one of the outcome of that. The other one is to dismantle the apologetic attitude of Malays and Muslims in Malaysia. If you don't dismantle this attitude, others will know. So again, this is we need a structural change in how we look at others and how we look at ourselves. Also, the point I thought that Dr. Sri has mentioned public policy. Some observations and also my work in Connect, I find that public policies must be informed by history and philosophy. If they're not informed by history and philosophy, you have policies that would be anti-civilized. So this is what's happening in Malaysia, and one of which is we're talking about the built environment. Policies that affect the built environment, which affects the heart. I mean, if you come back when you speak about policy, people don't speak about heart. I think this is the fact that we have to speak about the heart. We have to speak about the sentiment. We have to speak about the sejahtera, the innate values, the buddhi of, for example, Malay society in Malaysia, and also the other cardinal or principles of non-Muslim and non-Malays with regard to living together in this country. Actually.
Thank you, Prof. Maybe we got already 3 questions and comment. If there is any reaction from our speakers, please go ahead so that we move forward in the discussions. Go ahead, Professor.
I'll just responding to the more of the my field of policy, public policy, and I think the rest about whether Madani is Islamic or Madani is idea of Islamization relevant or not. I think Prof will have the qualities to answer that one. But I just want to respond to the idea of philosophy, like Professor Murad mentioned on public must be informed by history and philosophy part of it. I agree with you. That's why I said in my first presentation, I mentioned that all the public policy must be deep rooted into the philosophical and the historical aspect. And I think we must not be very segmentized here in our thinking of public policy. Although Malaysian politics is very much segmentized. Malaysian politics is very much segmentized because we are being segmentized by our racial polarization. And that affects the way we deliver politicians, expresses whatever ideas to the public. And this it's not sustainable actually, I agree, it's not sustainable. We have to be, we have to change the way we communicate as a politician to the public. So, like, okay, why do we say Madani and not say civil society, masyarakat civil, for example? Malaysia yang lebih civil in Malay, the more civil Malaysia, for example. Why can't we say that? And why we choose to say Madani for that matter? Now, this comes back to the question of what Professor has touched a little bit on in his early presentation, that in Malaysia, Islam is the official religion of the country, the religion of the federation, Article 3. That is the most important aspect where all politicians must work within that context. But later on, the radicalization of Islam, people were competing, who is more Islamic? The pressure of, we cannot deny the fact that the pressure of Islamization during Datuk Sri Anwar's time as the minister in the cabinet and Islam. The idea of Islamization also came as a political response to BAS, the Islamic Party, who said that they were more Islamic than Tun. So I think this happens in not just Malaysia, but also in other countries. Every political party is competing to tell that I am more Islamic than you, so you should vote me. This is dangerous. I've said this many times, and I will say it now. We do not compete who are more Islamic. Because if we do that, the nation will be destroyed. You become radicalized than your opposition. So that is why ideas like Rahmah come in the middle. You have Islamophobia at one end, fearless and baseless fear of Islam, and you have the radicalization of religion. So Islam, Rahmatan lil Alameen, comes in the middle, and that translates into policy, our stand towards multi-religiosity, our stand towards multicultural, and I think we should, as Prof. Murad mentioned on the structural change, the first thing to be changed in this country is a politician. But you must remember, politicians need votes. I lost my vote because I stand on my ground. So they attack me as being liberal. They attack me as supporting LGBT. They attack me because I sold off the Lembaga Tabung Haji. I'm not much. I mean, to the Muslim, I'm not that Islamic. To the liberal, I'm not that liberal. You see my predicament? I paid the price. I lost in the last election after 3 terms, 15 years. But it's okay. Why? Because with the Madani, and before a little attempt of Rahma, I believe the country is moving towards, which are not people not talking about Rahma, people talking about Madani, but I believe it's not enough. We need to go further. And just to add to that expansion of ideas, not to be very limited to the local context only per se, I agree. That's what brought me to the Cambridge University. I presented the idea of compassionate state to Cambridge University among the professors. I went to the Sarajevo University to deliver my speech on Rahma. And just last week, I was in Cambodia. And I met the minister that is in charge of the Islamic affair, and they are minority in Cambodia. I spoke to him about the need for a minority Muslim to have a strong stand, although not as complicated as what we have. And I proposed to him to adopt the Rahma policy. And I said, I have all the documents. And he's very much interested. Inshallah, who knows? Maybe Cambodia, for the minority Muslim, will accept Rahmatul lil Alamin as a policy, not as a philosophy, but as a policy. I went to Thailand to meet the Muslims there and approach them and say, look, this is a good idea. We have tried it in Malaysia. Would you want to have our documents so that you can apply in your country? So for me, although it is a model for Malaysia in terms of policy, but I would believe with such ideas, putting philosophy and history into practical contemporary world of the sophisticated needs of multi-religiosity, multi-ethnicity, I think the policy of Madani and Rahma will prevail, not just only in Malaysia, but also throughout the world, or even in the Arab countries. I'm sorry if there are any Arab students here. I always told this to my friends. Why are we learning from the Arabs about peaceful coexistence? Yeah. Where is the peaceful coexistence? We should tell them, you want to learn peaceful coexistence? Come to Malaysia. But what do we have to show them? Documents, experience. So I think, as Prof has mentioned, Malaysia being the center of Islam in this country and Indonesia can become that strong nation to give a model to the world on how Islam exists in the modern world.
Mashallah.
Yeah, this is my
Thank you, Dr. Sri. Any reaction from Prof?
Yes. How many minutes are we?
2 minutes, Prof. So many people are there
Yes,
raising
but
hand.
I think this is very important.
Yeah, go ahead, Prof.
It is, I will respond to all the points raised together. It is very, very important to emphasize the predominantly universal character of Islam. Now, we live at a time when we are all, we go for sectarian interpretation, sectarian ideologies, very, very sectarian. We even exclusivize Islam. We make Islam as an exclusive concern of Muslims. That's the kind of situation we have. Yeah? But the people in the past, the Muslims in the past, did not think that way. They think in a very open, in very inclusive way. So let's take the case of Al-Farabi. In the 10th century of the Common Era, he wrote his theory of Madani, the theory of Madani. He synthesized these ideas on Madani from the Islamic sources. This is the Greek sources, Aristotle, Plato, who also talked about Madani. Of course, what was the Greek word used by Plato and Aristotle? Of course, Madani is an Arabic word. It doesn't mean that there was no Madani before Islam. There was Madani before Islam. And that was discussed by Plato and Aristotle. They used the word politikon. Politikon, which Al-Farabi translated into Madani. Madani, the idea of Madani was already with the Prophet ﷺ. But in the time of the Prophet ﷺ, Madani was a reality without a name. Now, Madani is a man without reality. That's our problem. Yeah? So, for Al-Farabi, he was talking to the world, not just the Arabs, not just the Turks, not just the Muslims. He was talking to, his writing was meant for the world. It was in universal language. So, but it was Islamic. It conforms to the teachings of Islam, to the Tawhidic principle, conforms to the Sharia, nothing. That's why he was able to interpret Plato's laws in terms of the Sharia of the Prophet Muhammad. Plato's title, the philosopher king, talk about the philosopher king. Al-Farabi equated that philosopher king with the Prophet Muhammad as a prophet and the lawgiver, the bringer of the Sharia. That was the kind of situation then. Yeah. Now we have to interpret that in very narrow way. That is our problem. Now we have a problem with that. So I think Al-Farabi synthesized the idea of Madani. Just read his work and see how strong, how universal it was. No wonder he was able to influence so many Jewish thinkers. Because when it comes to political thought, there was closer affinity to Islam and the Jewish and the Judaism rather than Christianity, because Christianity does not have a Sharia. But the Jews have a Sharia, the Torah. Yeah? So actually, Samuel Huntington was influenced a lot by medieval Jewish political thought, who owed their thought to Al-Farabi. Say Maimonides, the greatest Jewish thinker, Maimonides, Ibn Maimon, he was influenced by Al-Farabi. And Al-Farabi's works were translated into Latin, then into Hebrew, into Hebrew. So that was the link. In other words, how the Madani of Farabi went to the West and later to the school, civil, concept civil, to John Locke's civil government, and so on. So I think this is very important talk, and therefore, Professor Aziz's point is very useful. Why the need for dialogue? So, in other words, now, if there are 6 drivers of script: sustainability, care and compassion, prospect, innovation, prosperity, and trust, let us universalize this idea. Not, and how should we understand this? Not just as Muslim, but what about the Buddhists? What about the Hindus? What about the Christians in this country? How can they understand this? They understand the meaning in their own, according to their own tradition. So dialogue, yeah, sustainability. Let all the people of the region get together and say, in the case of Malaysia, can we come up with the concept of holistic sustainability, kemampanan bersepadu, not just about environmental sustainability, not just for economic sustainability, but civilizational sustainability, to sustain human civilization itself. Not just to sustain Islamic civilization, but to sustain human civilization, which is now going down the drain. Yeah, the materialism is degrading human civilization, and now let us through this Madani work for Malaysia and the world.
Yeah, thank
This
you.
is the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Prof. Azani wanted to react to.
Actually, also Prof already said the question, right? I think actual dialogue has not taken place. In fact, we at the center, Prof. Osman, very humbly thinking of starting this, because we're already speaking to some of our colleagues in the other commissions. We would like to ask them, but it has to be properly planned and has to be guided, and it is to be open. There has to be rules of the game, because there are also people, I think their degree of sincerity is perhaps not to the level that they require. And as Dr. Sudi says, politics and philosophy and history, I think this is the other value of the current Madani concept. I think in the forward of the book in honor of Professor Mabaka that was recently launched, in the Prime Minister said, you know, when I listen to my colleagues who are philosophers and all these clever academics in the I still feel that I needed, because the political push It's needed. It's all these wonderful ideas. Without the political dimension, you cannot make it a state thing. So I think it's about time once upon a time people speak about the philosopher king in a very nice manner, right? But then people did not respect that idea. Yeah, the idea. This is the problem. Men cannot live without dualism too. This I will go back because I like to read these people because they are telling you they've gone one circle and now they are in need of our input. And here we've got this, here's humor, we've got everything. When after the answer? And then worse still, you don't want to face people. You don't want that knowledge. The answer would be basically a bunch of a trillion of cells, just like you. I'm sorry, my biology is coming to the fore. But we can see ourselves like Bani Adam, if you so believe, Adam and the Prophet. Even the scientists are talking about the biological Adam. Because the scientists have discovered the atheistic scientists, the non-believers, they looked at the Y gene, which is responsible for making you male, and they went up to this single human being, which for lack of better word, they found a biological Adam. So that's what I said, scientifically speaking, there's no problem. But I'm talking about a science which is not the one that's bringing humanity down now. So science is just a tool. So my point is, what the dialogue tool let's do. But then again, you just let a few people, let everybody hide behind the chair. So you do it first. If you get hammered, you get hammered. No, I think it has to be a national thing, and I think beginning with the articles that I read in the newspaper by non-Muslims, for them to understand Madani, they actually read what the Prime Minister was doing, was saying before that, and I did not doing. They're all Muslims. So they're reading everything in a very objective way. And this is the point. You have to be objective. You have to be open about things. And of course, study there was the issue of knowledge, right? Somebody talked about knowledge. The knowledge to is important. Here we don't know the history enough. Yeah, don't know enough history, let alone the philosophy and all that. But then again, can we make things, not so difficult? Yes, we can. And I think this is what he has done. He said, takrif kami adalah. He said, takrif biasa ini, takrif kami adalah. And then he goes on to say which department is supposed to do what. And then he lays everything like in the budget with Quran and Hadith. And did it scare people? I don't think it did. Because he put the conventional ideas first, and then he supported it with the revelation of the value source of it. Then Muslim can see, he believes in this because this is what his solution said. This is one way of universalizing Islam. So that's my humble statement.
Yes. Thank you, Prof. I think a lot of good ideas coming, and because we are short of time, it's already 4:30. Maybe what we have many people want to ask there in the YouTube questions. Our people here. Maybe what we can do, I want just people, they just direct question in 1 minute so that we can give time more to our scholars to give points and ideas. Maybe we can, sister, okay, go ahead.
Thank you for the practical, straightforward explanation. My question is, does Madani include the transformation of the people's mentality, or does it assume social change is enough to bring about individual change? And if it talks about transformation of mentality, what obstacles might there be that would block a change of mentality? Thank you.
Okay, that's one. Sister Pisharat, go ahead, straight to the point.
Thank you very much to all the panelists for propounding these contributions. My question is, I do not claim to have an extensive understanding of the Malaysian political system. Nevertheless, I would appreciate if you could a little bit elaborate about how the Bhumiputra policy that happens to be the centerpiece of current Malaysian government's modeling, how does that align with the Madani framework, the supposedly privileging of one ethnic with all others? How does the Madani framework deal with that kind of question?
Okay, that's very good. The other last question, Doctor, Sheikh Muzammil will handle this. Okay. Okay. We can still talk and hear each other, correct?
Okay.
So we move forward. Okay. Our doctor, he wanted to ask something. I hope we can go straight to the point. Go ahead.
Well, actually, many of the things that I wanted to mention, our friend Murat has mentioned. I also believe that sometimes sticking to words or thinking of new words and trying to suggest that they mean something new, whereas we are all familiar with the concept, makes the things convoluted and people get confused with it. And I feel that, in a society when we are having Muslims in majority, it would be good to find Islamicity in other faiths. Not say that, because if Sayyidina Ibrahim was a Muslim according to the Quran, I'm sure he didn't pray 5 times a day, or he didn't make ablution the way we do. Therefore, the meaning of Islamic or being Muslim was different in a universal level. So we're talking about the universality of Islam. And if Sayyidina Isa and Musa are our prophets as well, therefore we may be able to identify Islamicity within not only the Abrahamic religions, but also in Hinduism, in Buddhism, etc. And that could be actually a nice movement to bring the idea of Madani, not as a new idea, fabricated just lately, 60 years, as you mentioned, but as a concept that we are all familiar with, and we could get along with.
Thank you, Doctor. I think these are 3 questions. I have 2 questions here in the Zoom. One is directed directly to Dato Sri Mujahid from Professor Khaliq Ahmed. He says, Yamba Dato Sri, Assalamu alaikum. Being an ordinary Malaysian citizen, though I love the Madani script concept, since it sounds more Islamic in its civilizational approach, however, I will like to see the sustainability in Malaysia's direction. Otherwise, the slogan keeps on changing, as it was like Islam Hadari and then many others. So what is the guarantee that this will be the last slogan and national direction will not change? And I think this is the bottom line of the question. Another question also from Ashmat to all of our people here. I think if I read well the question, he is maybe hinting towards whether we will be having the freedom to go for the implementation without like restrictions and limitations which we see in many other models, whether the Madani framework will create that environment for people to move forward and to go for the implementation and enrich the discourse. These are some of the things, and I hope all our professors in this maybe before last round can give their comments so that we can enrich the discussion. Dato Sri, go ahead.
There was a good question raised by our sister on the issue of mentality, whether such ideas like Madani can be an impetus for a change of mentality, whether they can be accepted. I think I'm talking in the view of a politician, not as an academician. Politicians need a slogan. Whether that slogan is empty or whether that slogan is full, that's another issue. But practically speaking, as a politician, especially in the Malaysian environment, the people of Malaysia are quite used to the policy of Islam, as been alluded by the professor. For example, you have penerapan nilai-nilai Islam, assimilation of values of Islam. You have Hadari, Islam Hadari. You have Islam Wasatiyah. During my time, it didn't take off because it was supposed to be on March 2020. The PM that time, Tun Mahathir, was supposed to launch it nationwide, but it didn't. It didn't happen because of the political instability. But what it is I'm trying to tell my sister is that having a policy such as Madani, for example, doesn't mean that it is just a slogan. That is why I agree with other panelists. Actually, if you ask me also, we are just talking about framework. We're just going around around the sky and talk about it, but there is nothing concrete as to where it is. So, but if you ask me about the mentality, either you want to change the mentality of the people, or you are talking to a certain group of people, definitely I believe in every policy, you have to tune down the understanding to the focus group. You don't have to make the people understand the whole thing that we are discussing here, for example. They will just need, that's why there is a focus, urban, on rural, on the law aspect, on the economy aspect, because it tries to look into the Madani overall framework into that focus segment, and will define it into detail. But for the public consumption, I had the same, I received the same question when I was introducing the Rahma. They say, what is Rahma? This is the name of a girl or what? You have this mentality of the public, this Rahma is, what is Rahma? Rahmatan, what? Rahmatan lil kafirin? It's sarcastic. We have issues from the opposition trying to play with it. So that is why philosophy is important here. Philosophy is important here. We do not negate the fact that what we are discussing today into what it is to be transformed into policy. We do not negate that it has been existed all these thousands of years. No, definitely. That is why we need it, so that you have a strong stand when you defend to the public, especially your opposition party, who will ridicule whatever good ideas you have. Welcome to the world of politics. So this is where I think you need to have that strong political will, and of course, academicians like you guys here help us in trying to make the people understand it's not just about politics, but this is also about a big civilizational development, which is good for the country. And the sister also raised on the issue of Bumiputra policy. Basically, whatever policy you have will not change what is already existed in terms of the pillars of the nation, which is in the stipulated in the constitution. Whatever we speak here will not go against what is already existed. For example, the privileges of the Malays and the Bumiputra has been in the constitution all these years. Whether we want to change that or not, that is another issue. But the fact that we are talking about Madani, about humanity, about freedom of thoughts and all this will not change that pillars, because that is the foundation of this country. I would say there's some limitation to that in terms of when you want to implement it, you have to do that within that framework. That's why we name it as a Malaysian model. It's not something that you can do it freely, but it is a Malaysian model that you are bounded with all these constitutional issues, culture, custom, local history, local context, and that is why Malaysian model is important in that sense. Dr. Khalid Ahmad, thank you for your question. I can't guarantee you. Neither can the professor. We thought that we were going so well after the election in 2018 that we come up with a lot of ideas, but it only lasted for 22 months. So you cannot foresee what will happen in politics. So I don't have that answer, but I do hope, inshallah, these great ideas can continue. And basically, there's another problem here. You know, when another minister comes, for example, when I was a Minister of Religious Affairs, I came up with the policy of Rahmatan lil Alamin, which if you look beyond politics, then if someone else comes, okay, let me just continue. But because of politics, they just shrug it away and come up with, I don't know, whatever ideas they have today. So that's why I said there are constraints, there are pressures. Let us hope that our political, our country enjoys political stability, and such ideas like this should not be confined to only political agenda, but it should be developing the civilization, which I think we can sell it, not just like for me. If I'm no more the minister, does this mean that Rahmatan lil Alamin finish? خلاص؟ لا. رحمة وين تستمر. أنا ممكن أتكلم في البر في الخارج. أنا ممكن أتكلم أقنع الناس غير ماليزيين أن رحمة للعالمين برضو هذا لكم مثلا. So that's why I said ideas, philosophy does not die. It continues. It's just that in politics, as we are talking about Madani in politics, or Rahmatan in politics, or Wasatiyah in politics, there is a process where we have to go through, which I have just mentioned in my slides earlier. Thank you very much.
Thank
I
you.
don't know if that answers the question.
Professor Osman, any?
Yes. I would like to respond to several of the issues raised by the various speakers or various participants. Now, first, I would like to say here that this time there's I think a little bit of difference from the previous policies, from the previous Islam policies or government policies. The difference is that this time the main idea, the main philosophy of that idea came from the head of the government itself, the Prime Minister himself. That's important in trying to see to what extent it will succeed in the future. Of course, assuming that the present Prime Minister will survive the full term, then I think there is a great chance that many of the things that they want to implement can be implemented. And that is important. I think we have to understand that he has been, Sheikh Ibrahim, has talked about the Madani, has expanded his comprehended Madani. In instance, his vision of Madani went over 50 years ago. He talked about Madani, although at the time Madani was more limited to civil society at that time, since the 1970s. And he has dialogue at both domestic and international level on the subject. So in terms of the idea, in terms of what he wants to achieve, he's very clear. It's very clear. I think that's the first point that I would say. Now, secondly, question about mindset. Of course, it is about changing mindset. How can we implement all this? Yeah, I refer to Dr. Amir. Yeah, I think it's very important for us to understand that policies are supposed to be dynamic. They are not static. Yeah. Still, question on Madani. Yeah? Yes, maybe in terms of the context, in terms of the framework. Basically, the framework is the same. Yeah? It's about civilization. Even though the question of what level of civilization, that's also an important question. If I want to translate into Malay, Malaysia Madani, Malaysia bertamadun, the civilized Malaysia. But the word civilized is understood in different ways. Now the West, many Western intellectuals don't want to talk about civilization anymore. It is a baggage for them. Yeah. For some others, they want to civilize us, not to civilize. But the point is, the meaning is that it's changing. Yeah. So I think Madani, what's important is Madani, the content. Madani, the content of Madani. Now we have it to be implemented in Malaysia. So we have to make adjustment in the context of a multi-religious country, multi-ethnic country. How should we approach this question? So that's why we say, let's have dialogue, yeah, to understand what we mean by the six drivers. So I think that is very important as far as I'm concerned. But one more, I think, we want this to be the concern, Madani, to be the concern of both academicians, scholars, as well as politicians. So I think the issue of Madani is both conceptual and theoretical issue, which needs to be explained. Yes, for those who know, it's an old idea, but for those who don't know, it's new. You know, so for those who think this is new, what should we do? How should we approach for them to understand? At the practical level, we don't start from zero. We don't start from zero. There are so many things that are that accord with the concept of Madani, which have to be practiced. Yeah? It's question of doing more, perhaps also how to integrate. Yeah? How to integrate all these things that we have done, perhaps now, within the framework of Madani. Madani providing the framework to synthesize what has been done, to improve what has done. In the context of how can we truly be a multi-racial, religious country, multicultural country, under the influence of, under the guidance of Madani? That is the question, and that opens up all those possibilities.
Thank you, Prof.
Yeah, just very briefly, I just want to say thank you so much for the questions, but I just address one or two. Regarding finding Islamicity in other faiths, I've been fine with that idea my whole adult life. I'm still praying to Allah that can happen. But we always have to constantly battle against people who don't understand and people who actually were to be sabotaging the whole idea and the whole exercise. I'm sorry, Prof. Osman, for me to keep on saying this, but the threat is real. Because once you are seen to be like Cyril says, to be in the wrong context of your religion, then your license is taken away. I mean, I'm being very clear about this. I have a colleague who has done so much work, and all she did was do a poster of World Religions Day. She did a poster to remind people of the fact that she's a Muslim. But she was attacked overnight via social media. Don't know what happened to her actually. And she was just a small NGO trying to promote and all and all. So now I'm saying, am I coward? No, I'm not being coward. I'm just saying that Madani seems to be giving me a kind of fresh breath of air. Under the aegis of this being a state policy framework, then I have legitimacy, I have better legitimacy. And I must say that my colleagues, my dear fellows, friends of Jannah, yeah, please come on board. Those people who are the unnames, who are, who already the tickets are already fixed for Jannah #1. Come. Help people like me. Don't scold me. Don't sort of insinuate me in my attempts. If I do wrong, you tell me what's the right thing. But because you are so aloof, you're so aloof. You know it all. You paradise is fine. But This is where the knowledge of the religion is so critical. The hadith and the Quran and all that. That's important. Imam Kamu, your faith is not perfect. But if you don't love another, you love yourself. Actually, that hadith comes to the picture. So this is the thing. That is mind-boggling. You know, state religion or religion that has been made so formal like that, not actually helping. I'm sorry, I really am sorry, but this is not an attack towards anybody. I'm just saying that. We need to change things. You know, I once asked my Buddhist friend, what do you do when you actually do your meditation? It says, like, if I'm sad, I just say happiness, happiness, happiness. Do I dare say that is equivalent to saying ya salam, ya salam? Do I dare say that? You don't dare. So this is where the science of dialogue is a very serious thing. So when you do dialogue, so I would prefer to do intercultural dialogue. We don't do interreligious dialogue. We're not great enough, not elite enough, you know. So yes, it's a very good idea, but you have to work out the situation nicely, and you have to be prepared. You know, you have to be open about it. Then you say that our panelists say the politicians and the academics and the philosophers, yeah, they play very important role. But I say the policy makers, the civil service, how many thousands of them?
Million.
Huh? Not 200, right?
Million.
Where are they? Where are they and how are they? So I'm just saying, kat kawan-kawan ni, okay, first and foremost, if you are Muslim, you tak kata Tuhan when you're doing a job. Are you doing it as part of the ibadah? This is another thing. You have to actually translate ibadah, some religious concepts into reality. You need to say after your past salat there is no more ibadah, is not ibadah. Whereas every word that you say is written in your mahfuz in the kitab of your amal, which you know receive from the right of God. When does all that knowledge, how does all that knowledge inform you in your everyday work? In your, you know, misdoing the correct, you know what I'm saying? So that's again, you know, we're talking about corruption. We say that it is in our DNA, you know, we say that. You cannot get rid of it. So that if we say to you, you not do say that answer. Who are you to say that you're supposed to know? So religion is a very contentious thing, and that is what I think you need anthropology of religion, history of religion, philosophy of religion. You have to understand. And that religion is not, especially Islam, it's not just for one race. It's not, especially Islam. Right? So we have to be open up. And this issue of people like prosperity is already on you know, galaxy number XYZ out there. It doesn't see it from the info. But if you are the mankind, this is what you struggle with. So I would like to humbly suggest, if you're serious about this, intern the Civilization Institute of the government have modules. So when people want to go for their, what do you call it, promotions, they have to pass certain exams through intern. So why can't intern bring some of these ideas and these explanations to the top civil servants, because they are the ones, I'm sorry to say, who will make this work or will not make this work. Because if you go down below a certain level, it will not make any difference. They will just follow what the heads of department will do. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Prof. I think this is really a great discussion, though I see many names raised in the Zoom there. They wanted to test of getting more views. That's why, inshallah, ISTAC will promise you that we will have more discussion and forum specified in certain areas of the Madani. But I'm very obliged now to end the forum today. And I think with the very good and rich ideas that we got from Dato Sri Mujahid, Prof. Osman, and Prof. Azizan, has opened to us a window towards Madani framework, Madani approach, or this Madani approach, which is meant to build a balanced tamaddun in Malaysia here, But to build that Madani or Tamaddun in Malaysia here, a lot of things are needed when it comes to policy making and when it comes to translating this into a real context, which is a multi-racial and multi-religious context. Brothers and sisters, dear professors, I'm very thankful for the people who are in the Zoom and the YouTube for the last 2.5 hours, patiently learning and doing ibadah with us here. We are really in a place of ibadah when we learn these things. Brothers and sisters, this Madani framework or approach developed by Prime Minister Dato' Sri Anwar Ibrahim, I think as our people mentioned here, it's not new, but it has lived with him and with his ideas in the last 40 to 50 years. So, but I think I read this script, Madani, and I think there are many things there, but just to summarize, we are talking about the 6 drivers, which or pillars, which are put to drive and guide our policies. We are talking about script as for sustainability, and sustainability here, not free or liberal sustainability, but value-based and driven sustainability, which is comprehensive and inclusive. C is for compassion and care and compassion, which is a very Islamic concept, if you wanted to say, and also you find it in other religions, in other philosophies of life. That's why in script, it talks about benefiting from the wisdom of Hinduism, Confucianism, Buddhism, and all philosophies of life. So we talk about R, here script, R, we are talking about respect, and respect is also a great concept in Islam, okay? And Islam is actually based on the idea of human dignity, takrim. We have created you from a single pair of male and female and made you into nations and tribes. You may know one another, the most honored of you. Honored of you. Inna karramna bani Adam. So it's original in the Islamic tradition that human dignity and respect is important. Innovation. Innovation from an Islamic perspective is all about ijtihad, is about creativity, is about dynamism. And also, P is for prosperity, prosperity for all who are living in the nation or in the country. And we are talking about T, trust. Trust is very crucial in anything. So, brothers and sisters, these 6 drivers will be driving policies in the 8 areas, which are mentioned in script there. Education, culture, urban, financial, economy, the eight things. Now, we'd like just to mention that as far as our university is concerned, IUM, International Islamic University in Malaysia, and this concepts of Madani and incense jatra and values and spirituality, we have been working on this for the last 40 years. But in the last 3 years, the university has intensified its work on what we call incense jatra, who is the human, who is a balanced human, a human, or looking at the all aspects of the human, not only the material, the body, the social, the intellectual, but the whole human, the balanced human. And we have been talking in the university about values, about culture, about rahmatan lil alameen, about empowering people, about thinking, about creativity from Islamic perspective and other perspective. I think IUM should be in the lead and in the fore of leading this discourse of Madani society, civilizational society, balanced people, values and culture for the sake of sustainable development. Our university in the last years developed that idea of sustainable development, but within the Maqasid Sharia perspective, within the Falsafa Pendidikan Negara the falsafa of the human, which is a balanced human. So, brothers and sisters, this is really a great discourse today. May God bless you all, especially our scholars who came and give a lot of ideas, and also the participant here, the participant in the Zoom and YouTube. May God bless you all. We will, let's end our first ISTAC forum on Madani framework for civilizational development by giving dua to all of you, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you for your time here. And I would like to end by giving dua to our late Professor Muhammad Kamal Hassan, who just passed away, our former rector, who has contributed a lot to the development of this university and this country. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless his soul and grant him paradise, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.